by him, and without him was not anything made that was made. We understand that Jesus created the worlds. We understand that the Father created everything through the Son. So it said in verse 27, so God created man in his own image. And that word again is Elohim, is plural intensive. It's 2 or 2,000. You had two there that were God, the Father and the Son. So it says, so God created man in his own image, in the image of God created he him. And it says something, male and female created he them. Then he gives this mandate that can only be accomplished between a man and a woman. That's how you know marriage is only between a man and a woman. It said, God blessed them, and God said unto them, be fruitful and multiply, and replenish the earth, and subdue it, and have dominion over the fish of the sea, and over the fowl of the air, and over every living thing that moveth upon the earth. The appropriateness of a man and a woman coming together and having children within the confines of marriage is shown through the fruit that comes from the womb. That shows it's appropriate. When you don't have I appreciate you, brother. Yes, sir. When you don't have a man and a woman together, you got a man and a man together, you got some foolishness. You have some foolishness. So again, and God blessed them, and God said unto them, be fruitful and multiply and replenish the earth and subdue it, and have dominion over the fish of the sea and over the fowl of the air and over every living thing that moveth upon the earth. Again, within the confines of marriage. That is the ultimate purpose for marriage. We'll find. That's the ultimate purpose. We're in Genesis, the 5th chapter. Genesis 5, thank you. Genesis 5, and we're going to pick it up at verse 1 because the mandate was given, and then these children start to be born. Genesis 5, and we're going to pick it up at verse 1. Genesis 5 and verse 1. When you're ready, brother, go ahead.
This is the book of...
Hold on. You can go ahead and read. I'm going to set you up. Go ahead.
This is the book of the generations of Adam. And the day that God created man, in the likeness of God made he him. Male and female created he them.
Go ahead.
And blessed them, and called their name Adam. And the day when they were created. Adam lived 130 years. He got a son in his own likeness, after his image.
Go ahead.
And called his name Seth. And the days of Adam after he had begotten Seth were 800 years. And he got sons and daughters.
Go ahead.
And all the days that Adam lived were 930 years. And he died.
Okay, so what you have here, you have the propagation of mankind that came from Adam and Eve, started with those two. And in the course of 930 years, they had many children. Okay, it mentions Seth because we understand that that's the godly seed, right? You had Abel that was a godly seed, Cain killed him. Then Seth replaced Abel in that lineage. But there were many sons and daughters in the course of these hundreds of years that were born. Now let's go to Malachi, the 2nd chapter. Malachi, the 2nd chapter. In Malachi 2. And see, now we'll see again, just to confirm the reason why he brought this man and this woman together. See, when people talk about, well, I want to get married. Why? Because I saw it on TV. You know, I grew up watching it. And what people really want, a lot of times people want, again, I might trigger some people. A lot of times the man doesn't care about the wedding, but the woman cares about the wedding. She's worried about a wedding. She wants a wedding. But we need to realize that that's not actually where it starts. All your struggle begins after the wedding. That's when it starts. After you have signed that paperwork or whatever, ketubah or got some government paperwork or whatever you've done, it's after that. It's after that. The real work begins when you sit down and you say, okay, I'm gonna walk this path with you. And then you have children. And then you're going to have some problems. You're going to have some pills. You're going to have some sickness. You ever look at, parents understand. You ever look, or if you've been living a long time, you got a spouse, and you look at it and they sick. Or you have children, you got to look at at the doctor, and he telling you something because your son might die. Who been in that situation? Oh, just me. Oh, you been there. Okay, yeah, you understand what you looking at. You say, okay, you got to be there for that person. This ain't about some honeymoon. It's bigger than that. But this is Malachi, the 2nd chapter, verse 15. When you ready, good brother, go ahead.
And did he not make one?
Uh-huh.
Yet had he the residue of the Spirit, and wherefore one? That he might seek a godly seed.
See, so that's why he brought the man and the woman together. Because in bringing the man and the woman together in the confines of marriage, you would have children. Do you understand that these children have the potential to be God? I want to let that sit for a second. He said, ye are God's children of the most high God. So that's the potential. That's why he wants a godly seed. So he said, and did not he make one? Remember we read that in Genesis 2. Yet had he the residue of the Spirit, and wherefore one? In other words, why did he make them one? Why did he bring a man and a woman together? That he might seek a godly seed. This is the fundamental reason for marriage. The reason for marriage is not solely that you have somebody to play big whiz with. That's not what it is. Therefore, take heed to your spirit and what?
Take heed. Therefore, take heed to your spirit, and let none deal treacherously against the wife of his youth.
So you're not supposed to deal treacherously as a man with your wife. What would these men do? If you read it in context here in Malachi, what these men were doing, they were just putting their wives out of their houses. Because back then, you read in Deuteronomy 24th chapter. See, everything is upside down. That's how we know we don't understand marriage. A divorce, which is not ideal. The bill of divorcement in Deuteronomy 24th chapter, in order for a divorce, first of all, a man could divorce a woman. You didn't have a woman divorcing a man. That didn't mean a woman was not protected by Torah, didn't have rights. But divorce was, a bill of divorcement was, and actually bill of divorcement was protection for the woman, actually. So what would happen was, a man would write a bill of divorcement and send her out of his house. And therefore, she could go and be another man's wife. But what these men were doing, this is the treachery. What they would do is, they wouldn't get a woman a bill of divorcement and send her out of her house. This is not in the time when you can go be a greeter at Walmart or a cashier. This is not in the time, I think I'm going to go back to school and be a nurse. No, this is not what was happening. You would set that woman up to be destitute. And so you might have to, that's why you had prostitution back then. Because people were doing, the women were doing that to survive. So what would happen is, she's out there more than likely, some other man, she's going to hook up with some other man. What does that mean? That will cause her to be committing adultery. And that will cause him to be committing adultery. Because this woman is technically still married to this other man. That's the treachery that was going on. That's the treachery that was going on. So he said, that's just a side note. So he said, don't deal treacherously with the wife of your youth. And he tells you why he brought them together. It is so that they would bring forth a godly seed. Now let's go to Colossians, the 3rd chapter. Colossians, the 3rd chapter. And I read this in the introduction. As I said, we don't really understand what we should be doing, and that's why we're in a mess. That's why we're in a mess. This is Colossians, the 3rd chapter, and we want to look at, Paul tells us the order of things. Let's read this again. This is Colossians, the 3rd chapter, and verse 18. Colossians 3 and 18. When you're ready, good brother, go ahead.
Wives, submit yourselves unto your own husbands, as it is fit in the Lord. Okay,
so he tells you what the wife's duty is. Remember, you are a helpmeet to a man. And it says, you can read this all over the Bible. Wives, submit yourselves unto your own husbands, as it is fit in the Lord. The Bible talks about you being a daughter of Sarah. Do you understand? I want to make a side note. If it is that you're supposed to be in submission unto a man, you better take heed and choose very selectively who you decide to marry as a woman, because you're going to have to be in subjection to that person according to the word of God. So if it's a man that you're not willing to submit to, you shouldn't be married to him. Think about that. Think about that. The situation when you look at a woman and a man is likened to the Lord and his church. Just like the church, the Bible tells you, just like the church is supposed to be in subjection to the Lord, the woman is supposed to be in subjection to her husband. You're literally picking a Lord. That's why even Sarah called Abraham Lord. This seems archaic. This seems misogynistic. That's if you're looking at it according to standards of today. But we should realize that these people and their standards of today are totally antithetical to the Word of God. That's not our standard. So, why would you not? Let me ask you another question. Would you not want to be in subjection to a righteous man? Because if you're dealing with a righteous man, you know he's not going to do you wrong purposely or on purpose. That's not what he's going to do. That's why you have to make sure you're choosing wisely. Now, what are the husbands supposed to do? Verse 19.
Verse 19. Husbands, love your wives and be not bitter against them.
So he said, husbands, love your wives. We read in another place where it says husbands supposed to love their wife as Christ loved the church. What did the Lord do for his church? He died for it. So that's the kind of man you want. You want a man that's willing to die for you. Certainly if he's willing to die for you, he's going to get a job. Right? He's not going to have you destitute. And you can read in the Bible even when the Lord provided for his church, for his woman, for his bride. So this is the order. But this is all upside down today. What wife you're supposed to submit? You will see the rolling of the eyes, the turning of the neck. But that's not what it's supposed to be. And husbands don't, and you can kind of understand why it is like that. Because if you're not playing your position as a man, it's kind of hard to expect a woman to submit to that. Why should she submit to that if you're not going to do what you're supposed to do? So it said, wives, submit yourselves unto your own husbands as it is fitting the Lord. Husbands, love your wives and be not bitter against them. Then it says to do what for the children?
Verse 20.
Children,
obey your parents in all things.
Go ahead.
For this is well pleasing unto the Lord.
Man, it's real simple for you children. All you have to do as a child is obey your parents. That's all you have to do. That's all you have to do. Obey what your mother, that's one of the 10 commandments. Honor thy father and thy mother that their days may be long. That's what you're supposed to do as a child. But now let's go to Genesis, the 24th chapter. He said, but that's pleasing in the Lord. That's all you have to do. Let's look at this thing. Let's look. So we're going to look at the family unit, the familiar unit, how it's set up in the Bible. Genesis 24. And we're going to pick it up at verse 1. Genesis 24 at verse 1. And when you're ready, good brother, you can go ahead.
And Abraham was old and well stricken in age. And the Lord had blessed Abraham in all things.
Go ahead.
And Abraham said unto his eldest servant of his house that ruled over all that he had, put, I pray thee, thy hand under my thigh, and I will make thee swear by the Lord, the God of heaven, and the God of the earth, that thou should not take a wife unto my son and the daughters of the Canaanites, among whom I dwell.
But go to who?
But thou shalt go unto my country, and to my kindred, and take a wife unto my son Isaac.
Okay, so now what we're going to see ultimately is how the nation of Israel was built. Okay, so Abraham, he charged his chief servant in his household. This could be Eleazar, more than likely it is. And what he does is he tells him to go find him his son a wife, but not amongst the Canaanites. See, that's another thing. You're not supposed to just marry any and everybody. You'll see that consistently throughout the Bible. We're going to see some examples of that. But you're not supposed to just marry any and everybody. And this is not necessarily a thing about race. What it is about who's going to serve the true and living God. That's what it's about. Who's going to serve the true and living God? Let's go down to verse 50. When you're ready, brother, go ahead.
Then Laban and Bethuel answered and said, the thing proceeded from the Lord. We cannot speak unto thee bad or good. Behold, Rebekah is before thee. Take her and go, and let her be thy master's son's wife, as the Lord hath spoken. And it came to pass that when Abraham's servant heard their words, he worshipped the Lord, bowed himself to the earth. And the servant brought forth jewels of silver and jewels of gold and raiment, and gave them to Rebekah. He gave also to her brother and to her mother precious things.
And that's another. He brought a daughter. He brought a bride price. And even if you keep reading this, so it wasn't that people would just get married. First of all, you want to marry a woman, you had to go to her people. It wasn't like hey baby, let's go elope. Let's go to Vegas and just do this thing. We ain't getting no younger, we might as well do. No, what you have to do is you had to go and find out if you could get permission from her people. Then also, we keep reading, Rebekah made the decision whether or not she wanted to marry him or not. So the marriages were arranged. You had to go to the father, whoever the men were of that household were, and you couldn't come empty-handed. You couldn't come. Women today selling themselves cheap. But that's not what they did back here. Let's go to Genesis the 29th chapter. Genesis the 29th chapter. Because here, years later, we have Jacob, who was born in that union between Isaac and Rebekah. He was sent to Rebekah's people, and now we're dealing with Laban again. And let's see what happens here. This is Genesis, the 29th chapter, verse 15. Again, these are marital practices in ancient Hebraic culture. And if we don't understand marriage, because we don't understand this. This is Genesis 29 and verse 15. When you ready, go ahead.
And Laban said unto Jacob, because thou art my brother, shouldest thou therefore serve me for naught? Tell me, what shall thy wages be?
So he said, you're going to be a servant in my, basically as another servant would be, I'll pay you. What do you want? Verse 16.
And Laban had 2 daughters. The name of the elder was Leah, and the name of the younger was Rachel. So
Laban had 2 daughters, Leah and Rachel. Go ahead.
Leah was tender-eyed, but Rachel was beautiful and well-favored.
So one of them was tender-eyed. That means, more than likely means weak-eyed. And the other, it says, was beautiful and well-favored. Okay, so now Jacob, which one did he want? Verse 18.
18. And Jacob loved Rachel and said, I will serve thee 7 years for Rachel, thy younger daughter.
So he said, I will serve thee 7 years for Rachel, thy younger daughter. Think about that as a woman, that a man would be willing to work for 7 years to be with you. Think about the standards to be with women today. That's why I say women are selling themselves cheap. I heard a sister say, she said, men don't even ask to date anymore. When they want to be with you or they talking to you, they just basically just saying, let's go lay together. What is that? That's what you got going on right now. But he said, I want to be with this woman and I'll work for 7 years. I give 7 years of my life to have this woman. So if you're going to do that, if a man is willing to do that, do you think he's going to treat you right? I would think so. Let's keep reading, good brother.
Verse 19. And Laban said, it is better that I give her to thee than that I should give her to another man. Abide with me.
And that's another thing for fathers. Fathers are actually in charge of finding, again, I might trigger some people, finding a spouse for their daughter. That's what you see in the Bible, throughout the Bible. Not that she would just go and find some dude. Where you meet him at? No, the man, because more than likely the man, first of all, the daughter is under the headship of her father. A woman's supposed to be covered from cradle to grave. From the time she's born until it's a point where a husband is found for her, now she's under her husband's cover. That's how it's supposed to be. That's how it's supposed to be. So a man is supposed to actually find a suitable husband for his daughter, and his criteria more than likely is not going to be yours. He's not going to be looking at what kind of jeans he got on, what kind of joy. Okay, first of all, does this man know the true and living God? Is this man a hard worker? Is he going to provide for my daughter? Is he going to be able to protect my daughter? But if you don't have a job, if you don't know God, if you ain't bringing nothing, why would I give my daughter to you? You understand? Let's keep reading.
Verse 20. And Jacob served 7 years for Rachel, and they seemed unto him but a few days for the love he had to her.
You see? So a man, see, and I tell young women, 99.9% of men are not for you. They're not trying to be with you. The one that's trying to be with you will actually marry you. I'm going to say that again. The one that wants to be with you will marry you before he lay with you. And he's not going to try to spit some game to you, thinking one thing, lay with you, and then dismiss. That's not what he'll do. A man that truly want to be with you is going to marry you. And that's the one you need to be waiting on. That's the one you need to be waiting on. You selling yourself cheap out here. Happy Meal prices. This is Genesis 30 and verse 1. 30 and 1. When you ready to go ahead, brother?
And when Rachel saw that she bare Jacob no children, Rachel envied her sister and said unto Jacob, give me children or else I die.
Now, what ended up happening is Jacob married, he did all that work, and then he said, give me my wife. And what happens is Laban sends in Leah, the oldest one. So he said, what has thou done? He said, what's not our custom? But you could tell that this is the okie doke, because if it wasn't the custom, why didn't you say that when he first agreed, or when you were about to agree to marry Rachel to him? You should have told him, well, actually, I can't marry you to her because, the oldest one is not married yet. So he had that going. So he ended up with these two wives. He ended up with Leah and he ended up with Rachel. Now, what happened is, it said when Rachel saw that she bare Jacob no children, Rachel envied her sister. Why? Because women back then understood that their purpose was to build a man's household. Again, I might say some triggering things today. She understood that's what her purpose was, and there was great honor in that. What is happening today? You ask the average woman today, and people are delaying marriage. 29 years old, 30 years old or older. Wait a minute, your childbearing 8 years, biblically, it infers that you are an adult at 20. So from 20 all the way on to 30, you ain't having any children? I don't want any children. Talk to young people today. I don't want any children. I say to young people, particularly as a young mother, what can you do that's greater than being a mother? Well, I'm an astronaut. I went to the moon. So what? That's not greater than being a mother. And more than likely, what you have, if you're working, I'm not saying a woman can't work. That's what you want to do. But what you're doing basically is just a job. That's what it is. Motherhood is something entirely different. And when Rachel saw that she bare Jacob no children, Rachel envied her sister and said unto Jacob, give me my children or else I die. Now what did Jacob say?
Verse 2. And Jacob's anger was kindled against Rachel.
Go ahead.
And he said, am I in God's stead? Who have withheld from thee the fruit of the womb?
So he said, listen, am I in God's stead? Understanding that God, see, when people, they want to have children, the first thing they want to do is get some in vitro. What you need to do is get on your knees and pray to the Most High God, the one that can open up the womb. That's what you need to do. But so he said, listen, am I in God's stead? Who have withheld from thee the fruit of the womb? Verse 3.
And she said, behold, my maid Bilhah. Go in unto her, and she shall bear upon my knees, that I may also have children by her.
Again, I said I was going to trigger some people, because this is so contrary to the way we think today. Do you understand that this is still a custom in certain cultures, that if a woman married a man and that she was barren for any reason, that she would actually find him a surrogate, find him a wife, and to have children by that woman? You go to African cultures today, you still see that. That was Hebraic culture. We know that to be the case because that's even what happened with Abraham and Sarah. Sarah was barren all those years. So what did she do? She gave him her servant Hagar, and that became his wife. So here, this servant Bilhah that was given to, if you kept reading 29, was given unto Rachel. He had her as a wife. So now he has 3 wives. Let's keep reading.
Verse 4.
Mm-hmm.
And she gave him Bilhah her handmaid to wife. And Jacob went in unto her.
Uh-huh.
And Bilhah conceived and bare Jacob a son.
Go ahead.
And Rachel said, God hath judged me, and hath also heard my voice, and hath given me a son. Therefore called she his name Dan.
So now if we read in 29, what happened is Leah, the one who was loved less, the one that he didn't work all that time for, he looking at her like, now I didn't want her as a wife. But Leah is the one that was building his household. He got all these sons from Reuben, Levi, Simeon, Judah, having all these sons by the one who he was looking at. One, she's so beautiful. But that just shows you something. It's not necessarily about beauty. This woman who you looking at and you say, I don't want her, has been a great benefit to your household. But now let's keep reading.
Verse 7.
Mm-hmm.
And Bilhah, Rachel's maid, conceived again, and bare Jacob a second son.
Uh-huh.
And Rachel said, with great wrestlings have I wrestled with my sister, and I have prevailed. And she called his name Naphtali.
So now, even when you look at the name, and that was something, just a side note, Hebraic culture, they're not just giving arbitrary names. Okay? So when Reuben was born, Reuben means, behold, a son. Simeon means, when Leah said, the Lord had heard my cry, he heard what happened to me. So she named him Simeon. Levi, she said, my husband will be attached unto me. That's what Levi means. Judah, she said, there's praise. Says, praise the Lord. Now I praise the Lord because I had another son. That's what Judah means. So they're naming them according to different things. Not just arbitrary names. Not like we do today. We're going to put Boom and Shaniqua together. Boom Shaniqua, that's her name. That's what we do today. Arbitrary. That's not what they did in Hebraic culture. Let's keep reading.
Verse 9.
Uh-huh.
When Leah saw that she had left barren, she took Zilpah her maid, and gave her Jacob to wife.
So when Leah stopped there, she gave him Zilpah to wife. Now, this is totally like, we can't even fathom this today. But this is what was going on back then to build this man's household. And this is actually the genesis of a nation being built. I've heard all kinds of foolishness concerning this. I've heard people say, I heard this actually a day or so ago. Heathens are polygamists. You calling Abraham a heathen? This was somebody in the word. You calling Abraham a heathen? You calling the patriarch Jacob a heathen? And we're going to find you calling a whole bunch of people some heathens. So you got to be careful about what you say. Just because something is not accepted in Western culture, the one that you've been indoctrinated with, doesn't mean that the Bible is condemning it. Just so you know, there are 3 marital statuses in the Bible. One is celibate. These are all neutral. One is celibacy. Like Paul didn't have a wife. Jesus didn't have a wife. That is acceptable. You can have monogamy, which ain't even being practiced today. True monogamy is one person with another person for life. And true monogamy is not, you got one person that had 25 partners, then that other person has 17, and y'all come together and that's not even monogamy. Monogamy is true, one person for life. Most people are not even practicing that, but that is okay. And what you see was the cultural practice here is polygyny. That's how the nation was built. But let's keep reading.
Verse 10.
Uh-huh.
And Zilpah, Leah's maid, bare Jacob a son. And Leah said, a troop coming. And she called his name Gad.
You see what it says? So I'm having all these babies now. So a troop is coming. That's where the name Gad comes from. Verse 12.
And Zilpah, Leah's maid, bare Jacob a second son.
Mm-hmm.
And Leah said, happy am I, for the daughters will call me blessed. And she called his name Asher.
Asher means happy. Verse 14.
Mm-hmm. And Reuben went in the days of wheat harvest and found mandrakes in the field,
mm-hmm.
and brought them unto his mother Leah.
Go ahead.
Then Rachel said to Leah, give me, I pray thee, of thy son's mandrakes.
So now, Now I said, Leah said, happy am I, for the daughters will call me blessed. And she called his name Asher. Reuben went in the days of wheat harvest and found mandrakes in the field. Let's look at something real quick. So, just to show you again, this is the practices. This is Abraham, who's the father of faith. He's the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. It says, I'm just reading this in Genesis 16:3, and Sarah, Abraham's wife, took Hagar, her maid, the Egyptian, after Abram had dwelt 10 years in the land of Canaan, and gave her to her husband, Abram, to be his wife. Then you keep reading Genesis 25 and verse 5, and Abraham gave all that he had unto Isaac, but unto the sons, let's just say, the concubines which Abraham had, and Abraham gave gifts, and sent them away from Isaac his son while he lived eastward. So he had many wives. Then we're looking at Jacob. Again, Jacob's name was changed to Israel. He had 4 wives. And you see all the children, 12 sons and 1 daughter, and you see who Leah brought forth. Reuben, Simeon, Levi, Judah, Issachar, Zebulun, and Dinah, it was a daughter. So the kingly tribe and the priestly tribe came through Leah. Now, mandrakes. This is how much they wanted to build this household of Jacob. Mandrakes. They call them love apples. Mandrakes are the fruit of the mandragora officinarum, a member of the Solanaceae or potato order. I'm going to skip down a little bit. It said they are still used in folklore medicine in Palestine. The plant was well known as an aphrodisiac by the ancients. In Song of Solomon 7:13, it mentions mandrake. Why am I reading it? Because they were using this as an aphrodisiac to have more children. This is how much and how concerned they were about building this household. So when we read, sometimes we read so we don't even know what we're reading. We've read this before that they were fighting over these mandrakes. We don't want, well, what is it, just some cake they eat? Just some hostess? No. These were mandrakes that they were trying to use in order to have more children. And what we leave off, Luke, brother?
Oh, we left off at verse 10.
Thank you.
So, we left at verse 11. We at 12 now.
Wait, hold on. We read because let's pick it up in verse 15. That's what
15. All right. And she said unto her, is it a small matter that thou hast taken my husband? And wouldest thou take away my son's mandrakes also?
Uh-huh.
And Rachel said, therefore he shall lie with thee tonight for thy son's mandrakes. And Jacob came out of the field in the evening, and Leah went out to meet him, and said, thou must come in unto me, for surely I have hired thee with my son's mandrakes. And he lay with her that night.
So that's how he lay with her. They traded the mandrakes. And then what happened? Verse 17.
And God hearkened unto Leah, and she conceived, and bare Jacob the 5th son.
And the Lord opened the womb, and she had another son. Or she conceived again. Go ahead.
Verse 18.
Uh-huh.
And Leah said, God hath given me my hire, because I have given my maiden to my husband. Mm-hmm. And she called his name Issachar.
So that's how Issachar's name came about, because it meant to hire. She hired him for those mandrakes. She said, this is my, and that's how they did. And that's how that's how they would do. In the sense of you with one wife and then you with the other. That's just how it was. But let's keep reading.
Verse 19.
Mm-hmm.
And Leah conceived again, and bare Jacob the 6th son.
Go ahead.
And Leah said, God hath endued me with a good dowry. Now will my husband dwell with me, because I have borne him 6 sons. And she called his name Zebulun.
How do you deny this woman's benefit? This woman has clearly been beneficial to you. That's why she said, the Lord said, God hath endued me with a good dowry. Now will my husband dwell with me, because I have borne him 6 sons. And she called his name Zebulun, which means dwelling. Let's keep reading.
Verse 21.
Mm-hmm.
And afterwards she bare a daughter and called her name Dinah.
Mm-hmm.
And God remembered Rachel, and God hearkened to her and opened her womb.
Go ahead.
And she conceived and bare a son and said, God hath taken away my reproach. And she called his name Joseph and said, the Lord shall add to me another son.
So now that's good. So now we went over basically again the genesis of the nation. The nation is built on this cultural practice of marriage. So that's what it's actually built on. Let's go to Exodus, the 1st chapter. So it's ultimately you had these 12 patriarchs that ultimately become heads of each one of these tribes. Now these people, this is again the genesis of a nation. They go into Egypt like this. We're gonna pick it up. It's not on your sheet, but this is Exodus 1 and verse 1. When you ready, brother, go ahead.
Okay. Now these are the names of the children of Israel, which came into Egypt. Every man in his household came with Jacob.
Go ahead.
Reuben, Simeon, Levi, and Judah. Issachar, Zebulun, and Benjamin. Dan and Naphtali, Gad and Asher.
How many?
And all the souls that came out of the loins of Jacob was 70 souls. For Joseph was in Egypt already.
So you had roughly 70 souls. 70 people going to Egypt, right? Let's skip down to verse 7. When you ready, go ahead.
And the children of Israel were fruitful and increased abundantly and multiplied and waxed exceeding mighty. And the land was filled with them.
So now they are producing. It's a bunch of them. But sometimes we read and we don't understand what we read. How was it a bunch of them? Because they were still doing this. We're going to find that out. So it said the children of Israel were fruitful and increased abundantly and multiplied and waxed exceeding mighty. So it was, at first it was just 70. Then there's so many of them. Let's keep reading.
Verse 8. Now there rose up a new king over Egypt, which knew not Joseph. And he said unto his people, behold, the people of the children of Israel are more and mightier than we. Come on, let us deal wisely with them, lest they multiply. And it come to pass that when there falleth out any war, they join also unto our enemies and fight against us, and so get them up out of the land. So
now this Pharaoh who didn't know Joseph looked at the progeny of Israel, these Hebrews, as a matter of national security. It's a threat to national security. It's too many of them. Because most people understand the more people you have, the more power you have. Let's keep reading.
Verse 11. Therefore did they set over them taskmasters to afflict them with their burden. They built for Pharaoh treasure cities, Python and Ramses.
And so they built these cities, with more likely as avarice. But now let's pick it up at verse 12.
But the more they afflicted them, the more they multiplied and grew. And they were grieved, and they were grieved because of the children of Israel.
So the more they afflicted them, the more they grew.
Right.
But we're gonna find out again what the practice was. What were they doing? Let's skip down to verse 15. When you're ready, brother, go ahead.
And the king of Egypt spake to the Hebrew midwives, of which the name of the one was Shiphrah, and the name of the other Poor.
So they had midwives. Midwives were the ones that were basically bringing the children into the world, delivering the babies. Let's keep reading.
And he said, when you do the office of a midwife to the Hebrew women, and see them upon the stools, if it be a son, then you shall kill him. But if it be a daughter, then she shall live. But the midwives feared God, and did not as the king of Egypt commanded them, but saved the men and children alive.
So why did they put forth this program of genocide? Because they were trying to stop their numbers. And you understand that you are biblically, you are what your father is. So you're an Israelite because your father's an Israelite. Like Timothy, you read in the New Testament, for example. His father was a Greek, his mother was a Jewish or a Judean. So his mother was an Israelite, his father was a Greek, thus making Timothy a Greek. So what they did here, like you will see in modern campaigns of genocide, is they would kill the men. If you kill all the men and you take the women, when you lie with the woman is the earth. The womb is the earth. And so the man is the seed. So whatever seed you drop in the earth, that's what's coming up. So they're killing the men, they were trying to wipe out the children of Israel. And so these Egyptian men could just take the Hebrew women as their own and have Egyptian children. Just like Joseph took an Egyptian wife and had Ephraim and Manasseh. Those children, Ephraim and Manasseh, were born of an Egyptian wife, but they were Israelites because their father was an Israelite. That makes sense. Let's keep reading.
Verse 18. The king of Egypt called for the midwives and said unto them, why have ye done this thing and have saved the men and children alive?
Because these women, they weren't going to just kill these babies. Let's keep reading.
And the midwives said unto Pharaoh, because the Hebrew women are not as the Egyptian women, for they are lively, and are delivered ere the midwives come in unto them. Therefore God dealt well with the midwives, and the people multiplied and waxed very mighty.
But they having so many babies. Sometimes we just read and we don't understand what we read. They having baby after baby. Man, they having all these babies. How they having all these babies? There's too many of them. They everywhere. Diapers everywhere. They everywhere. Let's keep reading.
And it came to pass, because the midwives feared God, that he made them houses. And Pharaoh charged all his people, saying, every son that is born ye shall cast into the river. So even these women, their households were built. But now he come with a new plan of genocide. He said, and Pharaoh charged all his people, saying, every son that is born ye shall cast into the river, and every daughter ye shall save alive. See, they got a new plan of genocide for us today. We're going to talk about that at the end. But they got a new plan of genocide today. There's still a plan of genocide trying to kill these Hebrews. So now, I said earlier that the reason that they were having so many children was because they were still practicing polygyny. And polygyny is the practice of a man having more than one wife. Is this me saying that you need to go and be a man and get another wife? Nope, that is not what I'm saying at all. What I am saying, though, is that that's what they were doing in the Bible. And me personally, I have a problem with people, no matter on what side you're on. When you come and say something contrary to what thus said the Lord, I'm here to set you straight. So, the census of the firstborn, Numbers 1:1. And the Lord spake unto Moses in the wilderness in Sinai, the tabernacle of the congregation, on the first day of the second month, in the second year, after they were come out of the land of Egypt. Now, they only out of Egypt 2 years. He said, take ye the sum of the children of Israel after their families, by the house of their fathers, with the number of their names, every male by their polls, from 20 years old and upward, all that were able to go forth to war in Israel. Thou and Aaron shall number them by their armies. It said, and when they numbered them, even all they that were numbered was 600,000 and 3,550. 605,550. That's how many they had. Now, Numbers 3 and 4. And the Lord said unto Moses, number all the firstborn of the children of Israel from a month old and upward, and take the number of their armies. And all the firstborn males by the number of names, from a month old and upward. Of those that were numbered of them were 22,203 score and 13. That's 22,273. So, question, how many firstborn males can each family have? You can only have one. Since each family can only have one firstborn male child, we need only to divide the number of fighting men with the number of firstborn males to determine the average number of males in each Israelite family. So you could find out, this implies that this was certainly being practiced still, which would explain, even, this is 2 years out of Egypt, and that would explain why they were having all these babies. That's 27 males per household. More than likely, the average woman is not having 27 children, let alone 27 male children. If the sex ratio was 1 to 1 back then, can't say it was, I don't know. But if it was like it is today, that means for every boy that's born, you're going to have a girl. Because today, men and women are born equally, but at birth, women are strong. So they are more likely to survive. Life is harsher for men, so they're more than likely going to die. So when you look up, that's why when you look up, you have so many more women than men, especially in societies like this that they had war. So the average Israelite household, if it had a 1-to-1 sex ratio, was 54 children. That's why Pharaoh like, man, we need to do something about this.
Look at all these babies. What were they practicing? The same thing their patriarchs were practicing. This is a modern example of that. This is an Ethiopian family. You can't tell right now, but here, right here, is the patriarch of this family. That's him, his wives, and all his children. It ain't like today where you got a man and a woman, they got 2 kids. And the birth rate is 0 because he only got 2 kids. If everybody doing this, there's a problem. That's a problem for the ones who want to put you in subjection. Because they can't do that if there's so many of y'all. Now, let's go back to the scriptures. Because people have a lot to say about, again, we're going over the marital practices of ancient Hebraic culture. It's good that we know what they were doing, so we know what the Bible condemns or what it doesn't condemn. Let's read this in Deuteronomy, the 21st chapter. Deuteronomy, the 21st chapter. This is Torah. And what we'll find is that marriage, even this type of marriage, is regulated by Torah. This is Deuteronomy 21 and verse 15. When you're ready, go ahead.
If a man have 2 wives, one beloved and another hated, they have borne him children, both the beloved and the hated. And if the firstborn son be hers that was hated, then it shall be, when he maketh his sons to inherit that which he hath, that he may not make the son of the beloved firstborn before the son of the hated, which is indeed the firstborn.
Go ahead.
But he shall acknowledge the son of the hated for the firstborn, by giving him a double portion of all that he hath. For he is the beginning of his strength. The right of the firstborn is his. So now this is, who wrote this? This is Moses. This is Torah. And so it said, if a man have 2 wives, one beloved and another hated, meaning you favor one more than the other. Last was in the case of Leah and Rachel. He said, hey, whichever one had the firstborn, if the lesser loved one had the firstborn son, you can't deny that son's inheritance because of that woman. So what does Torah require? It requires that a man that's in this position execute justice and righteousness. It doesn't say that if you have 2 wives, you're going to hell or that you're a heathen. How are you a heathen? That would make Abraham a heathen. That would make Jacob a heathen. That would make Moses a heathen. Moses had, all right, here we go. This is Exodus 2 and 21. You read in Exodus 2 and 21 that Moses was content to dwell with a man, and he gave Moses Zipporah, his wife, his daughter. So Moses had Zipporah. Then you go to Numbers 12. It said Moses and Aaron spake against Moses Miriam and Aaron spake against Moses because of the Ethiopian woman whom he had married an Ethiopian woman. So it never said that Zipporah died, that he divorced Zipporah. It said he had an Ethiopian wife. And the Lord gave Miriam leprosy for them coming against Moses. Then potentially he had a 3rd wife in Judges, the 4th chapter and 11. It said, now Heber the Kenite, which was of the children of Vows, the father-in-law of Moses. That's not Jethro. And that's not the Ethiopian woman's father, because it said the children of Vows, the father-in-law of Moses. Heber the Kenite. She was an Ethiopian. That's why I said we read, but we don't understand what we read. So it said the father-in-law of Moses had severed himself from the Kenites and pitched his tent unto the explain of Zenium. Let's go back to the scriptures. Well, actually, we're gonna read this here. This is the prevalence, just to show you how prevalent this is. I'm gonna show you some of these judges and kings and just common people that had these wives. This is Elkanah, that's Samuel's father. He had 2 wives. The name of Hannah, that was Samuel was a Levite. Samuel was a judge. Samuel was a prophet, and Samuel was a Nazarite. And his father had 2 wives. Gideon had 70 sons.
He had 70 sons. We don't tell him how many daughters. And it said he had many wives and he had a concubine in Shechem. Jair had 20, well, he judged Israel 22 years, 30 sons. They each had 30 ass colts, and they had 30 cities. That implies that he had multiple spouses. Ibzan, another judge, had 30 sons, 30 daughters, and he judged Israel 7 years. Why are we calling these men heathen? Abdon, he had 40 sons and 30 nephews. You're not having 40 sons if you have one wife. King David and Saul, listen to what the Lord said unto David through the words of Nathan. When one thing that David did that was wrong, he committed adultery with Bathsheba, and then had Uriah the Hittite killed. That was his problem. Not that he had women, because matter of fact, it said, thus said the Lord God of Israel, I anointed thee king over Israel, and I delivered thee out of the hand of Saul. And I gave thee thy master's house, and thy master's wives into thy bosom, and gave thee the house of Israel and of Judah. And if that had been too little, I would moreover have given unto thee such and such things. People don't realize if he was against it, why did he allow the nation to be built through? King David, when he starts to grow, 2 Samuel 5 and 13, and David took him more concubines and wives out of Jerusalem after he was come from Hebron. And there were yet sons and daughters born to David. These are David's children and his wife. That's his family tree. His tree looking like it's actually more people than Jacob's. You understand? Solomon went overboard. Solomon, you read in 1 Kings 11 and 1 that he had 700 wives, 300 concubines. And you read in Deuteronomy 17 chapter that a king wasn't supposed to multiply wives, gold, silver, and unto himself, horses unto himself. And that's what he did. He had a harem, as they would call it. And the main thing was that these foreign wives didn't know God, worshiped falsely. And so he forgot the number one thing that every man should remember is that you serve God first and foremost. It would have been better for him not to have any wife than to have all these wives and they turn his heart from God. It would have been better for him than not to have any wife. King's Rehoboam was his son. He had 18 wives, 60 concubines. Abijah had 14 wives, 22 sons, 16 daughters. Jehoram had many wives. King Joash, he was the child king. Jehoiada, who was a priest, who was so revered that they buried him with the kings. He protected this child when he was a child. He found him 2 wives, you read in the Bible. But they heathen though. Common men. I'm going to just go through. Asher had 2 wives. Ezra had 7. Heman implied by the numbers of sons that he had. Hosea, the tribe of Issachar. It said the tribe of Issachar, these men, they just said, it just had many wives. Jeremiah, he had several wives. All through the Bible. Caleb, it says he had wives, and it gives their concubines names. Manasseh, Mary, Nahor, Shaharim, and Shemaiah. Simeon, Terah is implied, and Ziba, implied by the numbers of sons. Now, how do we get to this is evil when the whole nation was built on it? It's because you were a slave in America. That's how you got that thought. Because we have accepted the cultural practices of other people, and these practices actually death unto us. So now, when they co-opted Christianity, because the first Christians were black Judeans, when the Western world got their hands on it, they were practicing something else, and they imposed their marital cultural practices on the word of God. So now you're walking around saying that, hey, if you practice polygyny, you are evil, you are wicked, you are heathen. But you can't read that to me in the Bible. Like I said, am I telling you to go with another wife? No. Absolutely not. I'm not telling you that. But what I am saying is you need to stop lying on this book. So Western thought. This is Basil of Caesarea. Such a state, polygyny is no longer called marriage, but polygamy, or indeed a moderate fornication. So you understand what you're saying when you say stuff like this? You calling Abraham a fornicator. You calling David a fornicator. You calling Jacob a fornicator. But the Bible's not calling him a fornicator, though. This is Justin Martyr. If then the teaching of the prophets and of himself moves you, it is better for you to follow God than your imprudent and blind masters, who even till this time permit each man to have 4 or 5 wives. So he calls you blind and imprudent because it goes against their culture. But Hebraic culture is something different. Council of Trent. If anyone said that it is lawful for Christians to have several wives at the same time, and that this is not prohibited by divine law, let him be anathema. You're going to be kicked out of the Catholic Church. If any place I want to be kicked out of and I was a part of, which I'm not, it will be the Catholic Church. We're not going to read all this. Let's go, just to show you what I'm talking about. Let's go to, real quick, let's go to Matthew, the 25th chapter. Just to put it in perspective. You can't be a Christian. Well, let's see what he told you. We have to be careful in what we say. This is Matthew the 25th chapter, and let's pick it up at verse 1. Now this is Jesus. This is read in my book. When you're ready, go ahead.
Then shall the kingdom of heaven be likened unto 10 virgins, which took their lamps and went forth to meet the bride.
Now they going, he got 10 virgins going to meet the bridegroom. Question, who is the bridegroom? The bridegroom is Jesus. So wait a minute, in a parable that Jesus is giving, Jesus got 10 wives. He likens the kingdom of heaven unto 10 virgins who took their lamps and went forth to meet the bridegroom. Verse 2.
And 5 of them were wise, and 5 were foolish.
5 were wise and 5 were foolish. Go ahead.
They that were foolish took their lamps and took no oil with them. But the wise took oil in their vessels with their lamps.
Go ahead.
While the bridegroom tarried, they all slumbered and slept.
Go ahead.
And at midnight there was a cry made, Behold, the bridegroom cometh. Go ye out to meet him.
Now you understand? They are all going to marry the bridegroom. 10 women. Why would, if it was sin, why would the Lord use himself in a parable, describing himself as he likened it to a bridegroom with 10 virgin brides? If it's sin. See, it's some things that sin. See, understand that the marital statuses themselves are neutral. Celibacy is neutral. Monogamy is neutral. Polygyny is neutral. The people in them are the problem. So, for example, I mentioned the Catholic Church. Their priests claim to be celibates. But we know that's not the case because they're molesting all these boys. So that's you doing evil in the state of so-called celibacy. Monogamy. Because people will say, well, every time there was multiple wives, there was a problem. Were not Adam and Eve monogamous? And haven't we been dying ever since? Wasn't the first murder because of that union when they brought forth children? The sons, the brothers murdered, one murdered the other? You understand what I'm saying? It's not, you got to take the Bible for what it's actually saying and stop invoking your own beliefs into the Bible. That's how you get in trouble. That's how we get in trouble. That's how we got Santa Claus coming down the chimney. The same thing here. But now let's go to Deuteronomy 25. Thank you. Deuteronomy 25. Deuteronomy 25. And let's pick it up. And we're going to pick it up at verse 5, actually. Because do you understand that there were certain times when a man actually was forced by law to take another wife? See, that's why I said we don't know anything about what this Bible is talking about. Deuteronomy 25th chapter, verse 5. When you're ready, brother, go ahead.
If brethren dwell together, and one of them die, and have no child,
go ahead.
The wife of the dead shall not marry without until estranged. Her husband's brother shall go in unto her.
Go ahead.
and take her to him to wife.
So now you got two brothers. The one, it said, and one of them died, have no child. He don't have an heir. So it said, the wife of the dead shall not marry a stranger. Her husband's brother shall go in unto her. So he had to take his brother's widow as his wife, even if he was already married, brothers and sisters. Why? Because the Lord had it actually set up so women wouldn't be destitute like they are today. That's why he did that. Let's keep reading.
And perform the duty of an husband's brother unto her. Verse 6. And it shall be that the firstborn which she beareth shall succeed in the name of his brother which is dead. That his name be not put out of Israel.
And that his name was also preserved. That's totally, that seems foreign and totally contrary to anything that's going on right now. Let's keep reading.
Verse 7. And if the man like not to take his brother's wife, then let his brother's wife go up to the gate unto the elders and say, my husband's brother refuses to raise up unto his brother a name in Israel. He will not perform the duty of my husband's brother.
It was the brother's duty to take his deceased brother's wife as his own and then raise up seed in his brother's name. That was actually his duty. That's what you read even about in the book of Genesis with Judah's sons. That's what he wanted his son to do. That's again, this is totally contrary to what we know and think about today. But let's keep reading.
Verse 8. Then the elders of his city shall call him and speak unto him. And if he stand to it and say, I like not to take her.
So if the elders of the city, who would be the ones that would actually help to regulate marriage. So if something was going on, you had an issue, you could take it to the elders. That was the purpose of the elders. You had the law, and they would execute judgment according to what Torah said. So they call this man and say, hey man, like you really don't want to take this woman. That is your duty according to the law. He said, man, I don't want to take her. Let's keep reading.
Verse 9. Then shall his brother's wife come unto him in the presence of the elders and loose his shoe from off his foot.
Go ahead.
And spit in his face.
Go ahead.
And shall answer and say, so shall it be done unto that man that will not build up his brother's house.
Now see, you had to build up your brother's house. Go ahead.
And his name shall be called in Israel, the house of him that hath his shoe loose.
That was a shame unto you. Let's go to Ruth. That was a shame to not do that. To not raise up seed in your brother's name. Whether you had a wife or not. You notice we didn't read, but if you were married, then you are released from this obligation. It doesn't say that. Let's go to Ruth, the 3rd chapter, and we'll pick it up at verse 6. Because here you have Ruth, who was married to an Israelite. Ruth was not an Israelite, but she said something that was key to her mother-in-law, who was an Israelite. She said, your people are going to be my people and your God's going to be my God. And so she went back with Naomi to her people. Now let's pick it up in Ruth, the 3rd chapter. And here we're going to see an example of this marital practice, which they call the Levirate law, which is what we read in Deuteronomy 25. When you're ready, brother, we're in Ruth 3 and 6. Whenever you're ready.
And she went down unto the floor and did according to all that her mother-in-law bade her. And when Boaz had eaten and drunk, and his heart was merry, he went to lie down at the end of the heap of corn.
Go ahead.
And she came softly and uncovered his feet and laid her down. And it came to pass at midnight that the man was afraid and turned himself, and behold, a woman lay at his feet. And he said, who art thou? And she answered, I am Ruth, thine handmaid. Spread therefore thy skirt over thine handmaid, for thou art a near kinsman. You know what she said? She said, cover me.
Because again, a woman is supposed to be covered from cradle to grave. So she asked to cover me. She said, because you are a near kinsman. In other words, fulfill the duty of brothers. Let's keep reading.
Verse 10. And he said, blessed be thou of the Lord, my daughter, for thou hast showed more kindness in the latter end than at the beginning. And as much as thou followest not young men, whether poor or rich. And now, my daughter, fear not. I will do to thee all that thou requirest. For all the city of my people doth know that thou art a virtuous woman.
So she said, we know that you're a virtuous woman, but one thing she said, you didn't follow young men, whether poor or rich. So that would imply that maybe Boaz was not a young man. And when you read about Boaz, he had all of this wealth. What makes you think Boaz already didn't have a spouse? What makes you think that? I know what it is. It's your modern way of thinking. You hear people say, you waiting on a Boaz. I'm waiting on my Boaz. Well, first of all, you ain't Ruth. It said she was a virtuous woman, are you? Secondly, I'm just keeping it a buck. Secondly, what make you think that Boaz ain't got somebody? That's not usually how that go, even until this day. A man of means, though, is not by himself unless he want to be. That's just what it is. A man of means is not by himself unless he wants to be. Let's keep reading.
Verse 12. And now it is true that I am thy near kinsman. Howbeit there is a kinsman nearer than I.
So he had to actually bear it out with another one who was technically closer to her deceased husband than he was. And so when he got to talking, he said, hey, I can't fulfill all my duties there, and I'll mess up my own inheritance. So they made a deal, and they all agreed. And so she ended up marrying Boaz, and who came out of Boaz? And Ruth, ultimately David. Ultimately David. Now let's go to Deuteronomy the 22nd chapter. Deuteronomy the 22nd chapter. Because what we're seeing today, again, is totally different from what was going on in the Bible days, what was going on in ancient Hebraic culture when it comes to marriage. And one thing, when you come, particularly as a woman, into the state of marriage, you weren't supposed to just be in any kind of state. Again, I might trigger some people today. See, one thing about it, one thing the Bible showed me personally in my life is all the things that I was doing were wrong. That's what it showed me. I was doing all these things that were wrong, so therefore I have to correct myself. So when you find out that what you were doing was wrong, what you don't want to do is say, well, I don't want to deal with that Bible. What you want to do is correct yourself. At least acknowledge what you've done and don't do it again. This is Deuteronomy the 22nd chapter, verse 13. When you're ready, good brother, go ahead.
If any man take a wife and go in unto her and hate her and give occasions of speech against her and bring up an evil name upon her and say, I took this woman, and when I came to her, I found her not a maid. So
now if a man took a wife that was not a virgin when he consummated the marriage, he would basically say, hey, I took this woman to be a wife. When I came into her, I found her not a maid. So what is that letting you know? That is letting you know that a woman is supposed to be a virgin at the time of marriage. Statistically speaking, in America, roughly 5% of women are virgins at the time of marriage. That's extreme. That's really low. That's very low. But that's what you're supposed to be before you get married. So now if you made that mistake, don't make sure that you're raising your children not to make that same mistake. That's what it's about. It's about the next generation doing it right. That's all it is. It's not to get offended. So now, again, if any man take a wife and go in unto her and hate her and give occasions of speech against her and bring up an evil name upon her and say, I took this woman, and when I came to her, I found her not a maid. And when you think about it, brothers and sisters, even statistically, especially when two virgins come together, their marriage statistically is more likely to last. As opposed to if you've been married before, or if you've had all these partners, the more partners you have statistically, the less likely your marriage is to last. Why? Because you've been downloading all these programs. Leroy got a program in there. Ernest got a program in there. Tyrone got a program in there. Now you carry all this baggage, like Erica Badu said, bag lady, into your bus. Now you're dealing with this new man, and he ain't got nothing to do with none of that. But you done brought all that anguish, all that pain, even some children. You selling yourself cheap doing that. Again, I might trigger some people, but we got to do things differently if we're going to call ourselves believers. Let's keep reading.
Verse 16.
Mm-hmm.
And the damsel's father shall say unto the elders. No. 15. Verse 15.
Go ahead.
I'm sorry.
That's
Then
right.
shall the father of the damsel and her mother take and bring forth the tokens of the damsel's virginity unto the elders of the city in the gate.
So now they had tokens of virginity, which was a bed sheet that they would lay on the bed prior to consummation. So when the hymen was broken, the blood would flow, that they would use that as proof that that woman was indeed a virgin. And the father would keep. That was an honorable thing to have. Let's keep reading.
Verse 16.
Mm-hmm.
And the damsel's father shall say unto the elders, I gave my daughter unto this man a wife, and he hated her.
Mm-hmm.
And lo, he have given occasions of speech against her, saying, I found not thy daughter a maid, and yet these are the tokens of my daughter's virginity.
Go ahead.
And they shall spread the cloth before the elders of the city.
Again, they're going before the elders now to execute judgment in this matter. And so that also lets you know, and many men, even inside of my voice, are guilty this. Sleeping with some man's daughter that you're not married to. You ain't got no right to sleep with that man's daughter.
Right.
But that's what you see going on wholesale. And that's why you got the mess that you have now. And it starts, they 16, 17 years old. Don't have a pot to, you know what it is, a window to throw it out of. No commitment, but they don't lay with somebody's daughter. That's men defiling all these women. Let's keep reading.
Verse 18. And the elders of that city shall take that man and chastise him.
Mm-hmm.
And they shall immerse him in 100 shekels of silver, and give them unto the father of the damsel, because he hath brought up an evil name upon a virgin of Israel. And she shall be his wife. He may not put her away all his days.
So now if it was shown that he was a liar, he got chastised, he got taxed. He had to pay that father. So you couldn't just say anything that you wanted to about a virgin in Israel, because that was an honorable position. And then it said he was obligated to fulfill his husbandly duties as far as everything he was supposed to provide for her. He couldn't just put her away. But then what else does it say?
Verse 20.
Uh-huh.
But if this thing be true,
Uh-huh.
and the tokens of virginity be not found for the damsel,
So if it is true though, that what the man said, no, she's not a virgin. And they come to the father, and they was like, okay, what are the tokens of virginity? He like, you know what? I forgot, I don't have them. Then what?
Verse 21.
Uh-huh.
Then they shall bring out the damsel to the door of her father's house.
Mm-hmm.
And the men of her city shall stone her with stones that she die, because she have wrought folly in Israel, to play the whore in her father's house. So shalt thou put evil away from among you.
Now you see the penalty for that? The penalty for playing a whore in your father's house was death. But look at us, man, I hate to say it like this, but look at us as a people. We're a nation of whores. We're a nation of whores. We're a nation of whoremongers, and we're a nation of sodomites. I'm not talking about America. I'm talking about Israel. That's what we've become. We've become a nation of whores, whoremongers, and sodomites, and lesbians. Because 25% of young women today are saying they're bisexual. Now, that's what we've become as a nation. But we're the people of God. But you see what we're supposed to be? We're supposed to be moving in righteousness. And marriage is righteous. Let's go to Genesis, the 18th chapter. Genesis, the 18th chapter. And we want to pick it up at verse 17. Genesis, the 18th chapter, and verse 17, because when you're looking at marriage, you got to set this thing in the right order. And for men who are coming into the truth, many times again, so you might have already been married and you're coming into the truth, right? You coming into a situation, and you've been shown what thus said the Lord. Now it's time to walk right. See, it's on the men to put it back together. These women ain't gonna put this back together. I said plainly, they're not gonna put it back together. How I know they're not gonna put it back together? Look at our community. They've been running our communities for decades, and look out. Why? Because that's not their position. It's the man's position to run the household. I'll say it again. It's the man's position to run the household, to be the spiritual head of the home, to be the leader in the house. Everybody has to play their appropriate position. But when things are out of position, you have a mess that we have today. So to put it back together, to make sure, this to say it bluntly to you, to make sure your daughter ain't on the stripper pole, to make sure your sons ain't the ones that are out here getting killed, you have to put it back together. And it don't matter what nobody think about it. It don't matter what today's customs and standards are. It don't matter what your wife may think about it. You have to be the one that's walking in righteousness. And when you stand on your square, don't move. I say it again. When you stand on your square, don't move. Because if you're standing there and you worshiping the true and living God and walking according to what he said to do and walking how he told you to walk, you don't have to move. Everything around you can move, but you don't have to move. She can move, but you don't have to move. She can kick up dust. Your kids get angry, don't move. Big Mama got something to say about how you raising your children. I'm here to tell you today, don't move. Let's read it. Genesis the 18th chapter, verse 17. When you ready, good brother, go ahead.
And the Lord said, shall I hide from Abraham that thing which I do?
Now the Lord said, shall I hide it from Abraham? Because I know Abraham. Go ahead.
That's right. Seeing that Abraham shall surely become a great and mighty nation, and all the nations of the earth shall be blessed in him.
Go ahead.
For I know him, that he will command his children and his household after him.
That what?
And they shall keep the way of the Lord, to do justice and judgment, that the Lord may bring upon Abraham that which he has spoken of him.
He said, I know Abraham. I know he's going to lead his children and his household in the right direction. That's how you got to be as a man. Let's go to Joshua 24th chapter. Here it says a similar thing. See, to put this mess back together, it takes men to do it. Because that's your natural position. That's your natural position. Like I said, it don't matter what nobody else say. Joshua the 24th chapter. Joshua 24 and verse 14. What did Joshua tell us? When you ready, brother, go ahead.
Now therefore fear the Lord, and serve him in sincerity and in truth.
Go ahead.
And put away the gods which your father served on the other side of the flood and in Egypt, and serve ye the Lord.
So what did he say? You better serve God in sincerity and in truth. The Bible tells you that his word is true. His law is true. His commandments are true. And that's how we know how to serve God. That's how we know. And he said, guess what? Put away the gods which your father served on the other side of the flood. Here the flood means the river, the Euphrates River. He called Abraham out of the hub of false worship, Ur the Chaldees, Babylon. He called him up out of there and said, walk before me and be thou perfect. And what did Abraham do? He did it. So just like Abraham came out as a man, you as a man must come out. You must come out the same way. He said, serve ye the Lord and direct your household. Verse 15.
And if it seem evil unto you to serve the Lord, choose you this day whom ye will serve.
Go ahead.
Whether the gods which your father served that were on the other side of the flood, or the gods of the Amorites,
go ahead,
in whose land ye dwell.
Go ahead.
But as for me and my house, we will serve the Lord.
He said, he said, y'all Negroes, you better make a decision.
That's right.
You understand? Whether you're going to serve these other false gods, but for me and my house, we are going to serve the Lord. That's what every man, that's the decision he has to make. And if you're not married to a woman, we got a lot of men that I talk to, that are correspondent, are part of this congregation in different places, that are not married. My advice to you, if you're going to get married, marry a woman that's going to be with your program. Don't marry a woman. Don't get in this situation that the woman is not willing to be with your program. And for the women who are not married, find a man that has a program. Find a man that is a godly man that you can marry. And that you ain't got to worry about him abusing you. You got to worry about him leaving you destitute. Worry about him not taking care of his responsibilities. You want a man that can rock with this. Me and my house, we're going to serve the Lord. That's what you want. Let's go to Numbers, the 30th chapter. And then you are the head of your household. And the Bible clearly tells you that. Numbers, the 30th chapter. Once you stop caring about people's opinion that's contrary to the true and living God, your life will get a lot easier. Even if they're in your household, your life will get a lot easier. I'm thankful I'm not in that situation. I got a wife that we're on the same accord. I'm so happy. But I hear a lot of talking to brothers and stuff that they deal with. Ain't nowhere in the world I deal with that. Ain't nowhere in the world I would deal with that. And it wouldn't be no argument. Because this is where we going. I'm going to sit there and argue with you for. You don't know what you're doing. This is Numbers, the 30th chapter, verse 1. When you ready, good brother, go ahead.
And Moses spake unto the heads of the tribes concerning the children of Israel, saying, this is a thing which the Lord hath commanded.
Go ahead.
If a man vow a vow unto the Lord, or swear an oath to bind his soul with a bond, he shall not break his word. He shall do according to all that proceeded out of his mouth. So as a man, you make a vow, you better pay the vow. That's why it's better for your yea to be yea and nay to be nay. People ask me, do you promise? No. Absolutely not. I don't promise. I'm going to try. You ask me to do something, I'll try to do it. But I'm not going to sit there, hand on your thigh. You swear to me to make a vow. No. No. Because as a man, I know, because you don't really have the control that you think you have. I can have all means want to do something and then be put in a position where I can't do it. So now I'm lying. Let's keep reading. Verse 3. If a woman also vow a vow unto the Lord, and bind herself by a bond,
go ahead,
being in her father's house in her youth, and her father hear her vow, and her bond wherewith she hath bound her soul, and her father shall hold his peace in her, go ahead, then all her vows shall stand, and every bond wherewith she hath bound her soul shall stand. So now we understand that a woman is covered. Again, from cradle to grave. The man is a spiritual head of his household. This includes his daughter. So if the woman she's in her father's house and she vow a vow, if her father hit a vow and her bond wherewith she hath bound her soul, and her father shall hold his peace, then all the vows shall stand. Verse 5. But if her father disallow her in the day that he heareth, not any of her vows, or of her bonds wherewith she hath bound her soul, shall stand, and the Lord shall forgive her, because her father disallowed her. So that lets you know that the man is a spiritual head of a household. That's your natural position, because you can disallow a vow made by a woman, by your daughter in your household, if you don't agree with it. And it's not a vow that she made to somebody, it's a vow she made to God. And the Lord will forgive her the vow because you're the spiritual head. That shows you the great responsibility that men have, and we have been woefully lacking in this responsibility. We can fix it all, brothers. Well, brothers, I'm talking to the brothers. We can fix it all. We get right with God. And we lead our households as thus saith the Lord. Do that mean you're going to be absolutely perfect? Come on, sister. You know the man you married ain't perfect. That man ain't nowhere near perfect. But what is he trying to do right, though? That's what you should be looking at. And if the man is trying to do right, you're going to be in a better situation. Let's keep reading. Verse 6. And if she had at all an husband, when she vowed, or uttered out of her lips, wherewith she bound her soul, go ahead, and her husband heard it, and held his peace at her in the day that he heard it, then her vow shall stand, and her bonds wherewith she bound her soul shall stand. Now, wait a minute now.
if the woman was married. If the woman is married now, have a husband, and she have a vow, she said a vow, he hears the vow. Hey, if he's cool with it, cool. But what if he's not? Verse 8.
Verse 8. But if her husband disallowed her on the day that he heard it, then he shall make her vow which she vowed, and that which she uttered with her lips, wherewith she bound her soul, of none effect. And the Lord shall forgive her.
Man, he could disallow his grown wife vow. So the woman could say, you ain't my daddy. Well, let's not be so quick on that. Just like your father could disallow a vow, I can too. What does that let you know? Let you know the position I'm in and the position you in. See, we're looking at 50-50 as balance. That's not balance in the Bible. That's not balance. Balance in the Bible is love and submission. A man is to love his wife like Christ loved the church, and a woman is to submit to her husband like she submitted to the Lord. That is balance. That is balance. So that means we both have to change our modern way of thinking if we want this thing to go right. Let's go to Proverbs, the 14th chapter. And let's look at what women should be doing. So often men will pick a woman based upon, like what the checker said, he saw Rachel that she was bad, that she was beautiful. Man, listen, let's look at what the Bible say about this. This is Proverbs 14 and verse 1. Proverbs 14 and verse 1. When you ready, good brother, go ahead.
Every wise woman buildeth her house, but the foolish plucketh it down with her hand.
What you want is a wise woman. Do you know that's rare? He said every woman buildeth her house. Wise woman buildeth her house. When you look at what Leah, what Rachel, even Sarah, what those women were trying to do, they were trying to help build up their husband's household. Look at Abigail as an example. A woman tried to save her house. Zipporah, Moses' wife. The Lord was about to kill Moses because he didn't circumcise his son. And Zipporah went to circumcise. He said, thou art a bloody husband unto me because of the circumcision, and threw the foreskin down at his feet. And the Lord said, okay, I'm not going to kill him. Every wise woman buildeth her house, but the foolish plucketh it down with her hands. Michal, Saul's daughter. Saul said, I'm going to give David Michal because she'll be a snare unto him. See, the wrong woman can bring you to destruction, can bring down and pull down everything that you're trying to build in this life. And men are supposed to be builders. I'm not saying literally building construction, but whatever you're trying to do, you building a household, you building something. You like the Lord, if you think about it, the Lord built the worlds. Your world is small on a smaller scale, but you're building something. You're building a household. You're building a life. You're building something for your children. You're doing something. Every wise woman buildeth her house, and a wise woman will help you with that. He said, but the foolish plucketh it down with her hands. Man, sometimes, brothers, if you ask the right questions, you'll find out what type of woman this is. And you'll find out that you ain't supposed to be nowhere near her. This is, let's go to Proverbs, the 24th chapter. That's actually not right. Let's skip down, do Proverbs 31. Thank you, Proverbs 31. Proverbs 31, and let's pick it up at verse 10. Because now here is Solomon, this king, he said King Emmanuel that's devoted to God. It's more than likely Solomon. Solomon, in his experiences, clearly understood something. When you read, he talks a lot about male and female relationships. And he had, we understand, to his own detriment, he had 700 wives, 300 concubines. He said something out of 1,000 men, there was only one righteous, and out of 1,000 women, wasn't none. But listen to what's said here about a virtuous woman. We read that Ruth was a virtuous woman, right? A woman that is morally upright. This is Proverbs 31:10. When you're ready, go ahead.
Who can find a virtuous woman?
Mm-hmm.
For her price is far above Ruth.
Now he said something. He said, who can find a virtuous woman? Meaning they are rare. Just because you wear a t-shirt don't make that you. Proverbs 31 woman. Well, I don't know. You sure? You sure? You could be another part of Proverbs. You could be the half of that Proverbs 14:1 where it said, but the fool is plucking it down with her hands. That could be you. Or you could be the contentious woman. Where it'd be better to dwell in the rooftop than to dwell with her. You could be that woman. But now let's pick it up at Proverbs 31 and verse 11, because it said, for her price is far above rubies. Notice it say a beautiful woman. Because when you really understand, we all getting old. We all getting old. Man, what's that in my nose? Something in my nose. It's gray hair. There's something in my ear. Because hair growing out of your ears, brother. Teeth falling out your mouth, crow's feet, varicose veins, sagging and bagging. All that's going to happen. It ain't about your beauty. Are you a virtuous woman, though? What's your spirit looking like? What's your character looking like? Who can find a virtuous woman? Look at high and low, near and far. Who can find a virtuous woman? For her price is far above rubies. Verse 11.
The heart of her husband doth safely trust in her, so that he shall have no need of spoil.
So he can trust in her. See, as a woman, you want your husband to be able to trust in you. The heart of her husband does safely trust in her, so that he shall have no need of spoil. He not worried that you're going to mess up the money. He not worried that you're going to be out somewhere and make a fool out of him. He not worried about that because he know you. Because one thing about it, people don't be realizing this. You married, you understand, you serving God even how you dealing with your spouse. You understand what I'm saying? So you're a man, you married to a woman, but you mistreating your wife. What you talking about God for? Right. You done abandoned your wife. You abusing your wife. You beating on your wife. What's wrong with you? Are you a woman, you married to a man, you cussing him out, talking crazy. He got to go out and fight in this world there around 15 as soon as he come in the house. Don't nobody want to be bothered with that. Nah, man, it wouldn't be me. It wouldn't be. I'll tell you, it wouldn't be me. It wouldn't be me. But let's keep reading.
Verse 12. She will do him good and not evil all the days of her life.
See, she's a benefit. When he made the woman, he said, I'll make a help fit for him. So it says she will do him good and not evil all the days of her life. Is she lazy? 13.
She seeketh wool and flax, and worketh willingly with her hands.
So she's not lazy. This woman's not lazy. Let me tell you something. When you got a real wife and mother. When you got a real wife and she a real mother, do you know she don't sleep? Why she don't sleep? Because she hear what's going on with them kids. She know you got to get up in the morning. She is listening to these kids to make sure they okay. That's when you got a real wife. That's when you got a real mother. When you got a real wife and a real mother, you know you ain't got to worry about food. Something that's simple. People think, oh, that's something simple. Or she looking at you like, you can cook. I ain't your man. You can cook. But don't you know a man needs something to eat? He needs to go out and work. That's stress. That's stress that he might be more likely making sure that you don't have to deal with. But then, man, we got stuff backwards. When you got a real wife and real mother, you know she the first teacher of those children. children know how to act because of the mama. When you got a real mama and wife. And then when need be, she can pull your coat and say, hey, such and such didn't do this. Oh, now here come trouble. And when you understand that this woman been doing these things, taking care of these kids, now you come in, what they do? You just get to work. You handle the business and get them straight. Because you know she been doing what she's supposed to do. No, real mama, you done told her, this is how I want my kids, and she do the complete opposite. That's not a benefit to you. You trying to go forward, and she got a rope around you, and she pulling you this way. That's not what you want. When you got a real wife and mama, you don't mind going out and getting it done. Because you know you got somebody at home that's supporting you. That's worthy of your efforts. But you know how many men sleeping in the parking lot? You know how many men come drive home to the driveway and stop? You know how many men sit there like, how in the world did I get into this situation? I do not want to go in this house. And she's looking out the window. Waiting on you to come in so she can start arguing. Something she made up. Ain't nobody want to deal with that. Man, let's keep reading.
Verse 23.
Go ahead.
She maketh us, her husband is known in her gates. Her husband is known in the gates. When he sitteth among the elders of the land.
Uh-huh.
She maketh fine linen, and selleth it, and delivereth girdles unto the merchant.
Go ahead.
Strength and honor are her clothes. She shall rejoice in the time to come.
And one thing about men that's about some great men, or wise men, they usually choose wise wives, and their wives are a benefit to them. Their wives are a benefit to them. Oftentimes, when you read, even in history, you read about men doing this and doing that, more than likely they ain't had no foolish wife at the house. That's usually not how that goes. Let's keep reading.
Verse 26.
Uh-huh.
She openeth her mouth with wisdom. In her tongue is the law of kindness.
She don't have something mean to say. When she openeth her mouth, it's some wisdom being spoken. You ever been around somebody like that? Do you think before you speak? But a wise or virtuous woman, she's speaking in wisdom. She might not even have a lot to say, but when she's speaking, she's not speaking foolishness. She openeth her mouth with wisdom, and in her tongue is the law of kindness. My father told me, son, he said, growing up, he said, be mindful of the type of woman that you choose to marry. Look at how she treats other people. I said, why? He said, because how she treats other people, she eventually gonna treat you like that. So if she treat other people like dirt, guess what? You gonna be treated like dirt. Let's keep reading.
27.
Uh-huh.
She looketh well to the ways of her household, and eateth not the bread of idleness.
You see what I was talking about when you got a real mother and wife? She looketh well to the ways of her household. She making sure things, and she will bring things to your attention that need to be addressed. And you got all this other stuff going on, quite frankly, as a man, you don't want to be bothered with that stuff. But that stuff need to be done. She be like, and then you go do it to the best of your ability. But she's not telling you that stuff to annoy you. She's telling you that stuff because she's like the manager in your house. She's telling you, hey, this what need to be done. This what need to be done. This is here. This is lacking here. It's always something. But as a man, you the savior of the household. You supposed to be taking care of those things to the best of your ability. Are men perfect? No. But you should be trying to do your very best. Let's keep reading, bro.
Verse 28.
Uh-huh.
Her children arise up and call her blessed.
Go ahead.
Her husband also, and he praises her.
Mm-hmm.
Many daughters have done virtuously,
Go ahead.
but thou excellest them all.
Uh-huh.
Favor is deceitful, and beauty is vain.
Go ahead.
But a woman that feareth the Lord, she shall be praised.
You see that? He said favor is beautiful, is deceitful, excuse me. It's deception. And beauty is vain, especially today. Favor is deceitful, especially today. This contouring stuff, man, that's some people need to go to jail. Man, I was like, what in the world? Favor is deceitful and beauty is vain, and it is fleeting. It's here today. You 18 years old, you in the prime of like, yeah, I'm looking good. You about 30, you're like, wait a minute, what's going on? What's going on? Favor is deceitful and beauty is vain, but a woman that fears the Lord, she shall be praised. Who can find a virtuous woman? So that's what you need to be. Let's go to Deuteronomy.
On verse 31.
Oh, 31, thank you. Go ahead.
Give her of the fruit of her hands, and let her own works praise her in the gates.
Mm-hmm. That's it. Give her of the fruit of her hands, and let her own works praise her in the gate. You ain't got to make these proclamations about this woman, because it's evident. Deuteronomy 4 is evident what kind of woman she is. Deuteronomy 4, let's pick it up. We're going to pick it up at verse 1. So we understand what the woman should be doing. Woman should be walking in righteousness. A woman should be trying to build a house. She should be dealing in wisdom. Let's pick it up in Deuteronomy, the 4th chapter and verse 1. Deuteronomy 4 and verse 1. Because then it comes to these children. And what you're supposed to do with these children. I work with children. One thing I know for sure, and it's certainly true, we have failed these children. And another thing I know is true, we're in trouble. We're in trouble. When you look at the future generation to come, you put your stock in it, you singing some Whitney Houston, I believe the children are our future, man, we're in trouble. Why? Because they have not received what they should have received from their parents. Let's see what the parent is supposed to give the child. This is Deuteronomy, the 4th chapter, verse 1. When you're ready, good brother, go ahead.
Now therefore hearken, O Israel, to the statutes and unto the judgment, which I teach you, for to do them,
go ahead,
that ye may live, and go in and possess the land which the Lord God of your fathers giveth you.
Go ahead.
Ye shall not add unto the word which I command you, neither shall ye diminish aught from it, that ye may keep the commandments of the Lord your God, which I command you.
We are nobody to add or take away from the word of God.
Absolutely.
We ain't supposed to add to it or take away, not adding any leavening. Because now you've made the truth into a lie. But let's skip down to verse 6. When you're ready, good brother, because what are we supposed to do? Go ahead.
Keep therefore and do them, for this is your wisdom and your understanding in the sight of the nation. So the law, Torah, mitzvah, commandments, laws, statutes, judgments, ordinances, this is your wisdom and your understanding in the sight of the nations. I always say, when you look at Torah, when you look at the laws of God, you're seeing what God thinks, and God is omniscient. So he is all-knowing. He can't help but be wise. So therefore, if you have the audacity and the common sense just to walk according to it, guess what? You are wise by default. You're looking at life through a whole different lens. It's through the lens of Torah. And there's wisdom embedded in it. You shouldn't eat pork. Yeah, we understand that. I don't eat it because it said don't eat it. But then if you look at scientifically, what's in the pig? Oh, okay. That makes sense. That makes sense. But the word is enough. But let's keep reading. I'm going to start at 6 again. Go ahead. Keep therefore and do them, for this is your wisdom and your understanding in the sight of the nation, which shall hear all these statutes and say, surely this great nation is a wise and understanding people. So it says, surely this great nation is a wise and understanding people. Be wise because you have what God gave. Torah, go ahead. For what nation is there so great, who have God so nigh to them, as the Lord our God is in all things that we call upon him for? So what nation is there so great that has this? None. We turned our back on God. He turned his back on us. That's why we're on a whole other continent, speaking a whole other language, practicing some other people's culture. That's how we got here. All we got to do, he said, my people are called by my name, would humble themselves and pray and turn and seek my face. Then will I hear from heaven, forgive their sins and heal their land. All we got to do is turn back unto God. That's all we have to do. But he said, for what nation is there so great who have God so nigh unto them as the Lord our God is in all things that we call upon him for? And what nation is there so great that has statutes and judgments so righteous as all this law, which I said before you this day? We ain't talking about the U.S. Constitution. We talking about the true Constitution. Torah,
keep reading, brother. Verse 9. Go ahead.
Only take heed to thyself and keep thy soul diligently.
Go ahead.
Lest thou forget the things which thine eyes have seen, and lest they depart from thy heart all the days of thy life.
Go ahead.
But teach them thy sons and thy sons' sons.
You have to teach it from generation to generation to generation. As we read in Timothy, that from a child that has known the Holy Scriptures was able to make thee wise unto salvation. That's what you have to give the generation to come. Not the new PS5, not the iPhone, not the, what else to get, the Jordans. I see kids walking around with $1,500 worth of stuff. Can't tell you the 10 Commandments. Deuteronomy the 6th chapter. And they stock is in the things that they have. They looking at you because you have an Android phone like you less than them. Like, do you have a job? You gotta bet your messages are green. Man, shut up. Deuteronomy the 6th chapter. And let's pick it up at verse 1. Deuteronomy 6 and verse 1. When you're ready, go ahead.
Now these are the commandments, the statutes, and the judgments, which the Lord your God commanded to teach you, that ye might do them in the land whither ye go to possess it.
Go ahead.
That thou mightest fear the Lord thy God, to keep all his statutes and his commandments, which I command thee, thou and thy son, and thy son's son, all the days of thy life, and that thy days may be prolonged.
Go ahead.
Hear therefore, O Israel, and observe to do it, that it may be well with thee, and that ye may increase mightily, as the Lord God of thy fathers hath promised thee, in the land that floweth with milk and honey.
So he said, I command thee and thy son and thy son's sons all the day of thy life, that your days may be prolonged. So you'll be prosperous and passing this down. Verse 4.
Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God is one Lord. And thou shalt love the Lord thy God with all thine heart, and with all thy soul, and with all thy might. And these words, which I command thee this day, shall be in thine heart. Thou shalt teach them diligently unto thy children, and shalt talk of them when thou sittest in thine house, and when thou walkest by the way, and when thou liest down, and when thou risest up. So
that means all the time you're supposed to be teaching your children about what thus said the Lord. Hey, I'm going to tell you something. You have children, you keep the Sabbath. If you only dealing with the word of God for these couple hours on the Sabbath, I'm telling you now, that is not enough. That is not enough. Especially if they're in school. Especially if they're in school, they get a whole nother program and a whole nother indoctrination. From the children that are there, from the teachers that are there. Then, if they have, because it's not like they're in a bubble, so they know all that's going on in the world. They got, these little kids got phones, they got iPads, they have all these things. That's teaching them things. And they are being exposed to things just like that. Just like that. You're watching a YouTube video, you could be watching something on sports, right? ESPN, Steph Curry about to break some record. Next thing you know, they show you a Hulu commercials, 2 men kissing. Where'd that come from? Flag on the play, a technical foul. Where'd that come from? I wasn't watching nothing associated with that. Why are you showing me that? So that means if you showing me that and I'm watching Sports Center, that means that you're showing these kids the same thing. You understand? So they're being exposed to all these things. How do you counteract that? You have to stay in this book. You have to make, and this men, you have to make sure that your children know God. It said, thou shalt teach them diligently unto thy children, and shalt talk of them when thou sittest in thy house, and when thou walkest by the way, and when thou liest down, and when thou risest up. Let's go to verse 20. When you're ready, brother, go ahead.
And when thy son asketh thee in the time to come, saying, what mean the testimonies, and the statutes, and the judgments, which the Lord thy God hath commanded you? Then thou shalt say unto thy son, we were Pharaoh's bondmen in Egypt. The Lord brought us out of Egypt with a mighty hand. And the Lord showed signs and wonders, great and sore, upon Egypt, upon Pharaoh, and upon all his household, before our eyes.
See, you have to show them. You have to show your children. They're going to ask, what are we doing? They're for you to say, go ask your mama. No, you're supposed to know. As a man, you know, and then you can teach your sons. Not saying that the woman should know, because technically, if you look at Timothy, his father was a Gentile, and he was taught the commandments, the law, statute, commandments, the scriptures by his mother, and his grandmother was a righteous woman. That's how he got it. But ideally, it is through the man. Let's keep reading.
Verse 23. And he brought us out from thence, that he might bring us in, to give us the land which he sware unto our fathers.
Go ahead.
And the Lord commanded us to do all these statutes, to fear the Lord our God, for our good always, that he might preserve us alive, as it is at this day. And it shall be our righteousness, if we observe to do all these commandments before the Lord our God, as he hath commanded us.
Do you understand what you're telling your child when you're telling them this? You're telling them that you are a child of God.
Right.
You telling them you have a history that I ain't think about George Washington.
Right.
Well, I'm thinking about some Thomas Jefferson for.
Right.
Listen, the true and living God manifested himself unto your forefathers. You are a child of God. This book is talking about your people. And what you have to do is walk in the righteousness, and observe the law, statutes, and commandments of God. Understand, if you don't tell your children who you are, you best believe somebody else will. And they're going to tell them something entirely different. Oh, you actually a criminal. You actually black, so that equates to stupidity. You actually a Negro, so you don't have any history. This is a kind of foolishness that's taught directly and indirectly to children in a variety of ways. But no, you tell them, no, you actually a child of God. And you're supposed to walk uprightly. And then, they'll say, oh, that's what I'm supposed to be doing? Teach them when they little. Oh, okay. Let's go to Psalms, the 78th division. We're going to pick it up in verse 1. Psalm 78 and 1. I know we're going a little over. I know. I was trying to be nice. Psalm 78 and 1. Psalm 78 and 1. When you ready, brother, go ahead.
Give ear, O my people, to my law. Incline your ears to the words of my mouth. I will open my mouth in a parable.
Go ahead.
I will utter dark sayings of old, which we have heard and known, and our fathers have told us.
So this is talking about Israel's history. Go ahead.
We will not hide them from their children.
Go ahead.
Show unto the generation to come the praises of the Lord and his strength and his wonderful works that he hath done.
So you need to teach your children about God, even how to worship God, how to praise God, teaching them that there's a God that you can call on in your midnight hour. That's my father taught me. That's how I know it. He put my coat and said, let me tell you about this God. He said, we will not hide them from their children, showing to the generations to come the praises of the Lord and his strength and his wonderful works that he have done. So now I know it's a God that I can get on my knees and pray to. And I know he'll answer prayer. Because I've seen it in my life. And then I can pass that down and am passing that down to my children. From generation to generation to generation. Verse 5.
For he established a testimony in Jacob and appointed a law in Israel, which he commanded our fathers.
Go ahead.
That they should make them known to their children.
Again, from one generation to the next, he established a testimony in Jacob and appointed a law in Israel, which he commanded our fathers that they should make them known to their children. Verse 6.
That the generation to come might know them, even the children which should be born, who should arise and declare them to their children.
So these little babies that's coming up, they're going to raise up and they're going to teach it to their children. Let's go to Proverbs, the 22nd chapter. What are we doing with these kids? When you look on the news and you see these kids, man, these kids going in these stores with hammers and tearing up stuff and stealing. When you see these kids killing each other, it's because they have not been given what they should have been given. We have failed these children as a society. So if you fail them as a society, what do you think they're going to do? They're going to fail their children. And let somebody break the chain. Proverbs 22 and verse 6, or repair the breach. Proverbs 22 and verse 6. What are you supposed to do when it comes to these kids? When you're ready, good brother, go ahead.
Train up a child in the way that he should go.
Uh-huh.
And when he is old, he will not depart from it.
Again, and that from a child that has known the holy scriptures, which are able to make thee wise unto salvation. When you train up a child in the way in which he should go, you train them to walk the path of righteousness. And when they get old, that don't mean they're not going to fall. That doesn't mean they're not going to make a mistake. But what it means is more than likely, they're going to stay on the path. Deuteronomy 21. See, a bunch of rebels. Bunch of rebels today. We raise these kids as if their opinion matter. I know that sounds bad, but it don't matter. This is what you're going to do in this house. Well, I think. You just be quiet. I'm going to do the thing for us. I'm going to direct us in the way in which we should go. You know, it's wetness behind your ears. You don't even know enough to even be talking. Deuteronomy 21 and verse 18. But sometimes you even got a child that they don't want to hear nothing you got to say, ain't going to hear what you got to say. They came forth of the wombs of evil. Well, Deuteronomy 21 verse 18. We ready to go ahead.
If a man have a stubborn and rebellious son, which will not obey the voice of his father or the voice of his mother, and that when they have chastened him, will not hearken unto them,
go ahead.
Then shall his father and his mother lay hold on him, and bring him out unto the elders of his city, and unto the gate of his place.
Man, can you imagine two parents grabbing the Negro? Come here. And taking him to the elders. Here we got the elders once again. Let's pick it up in verse 20.
And they shall say unto the elders of his city, This our son is stubborn and rebellious.
Go ahead.
He will not obey our voice. He is a glutton and a drunkard.
So he is a rebel. He won't listen to anything that we have to say. Does it say, well, the elders say, you know what, just give him a timeout. Well, you know what? Well, maybe, you know, you just he's just going through a phase. Just let him do what he wants. You know what? They got that new iPhone 28 coming out. You can get him that. Let's see what it says.
Verse 21. And all the men of his city shall stone him with stones that he die.
Go ahead.
So shalt thou put evil away from among you, and all Israel shall hear and fear.
So all that we're doing when it comes to marriage and what we're doing with man and woman, with each other, with these kids, ain't nothing compared to what is going on in the Bible. We're doing the complete opposite. We're almost finished. I just want to go over this, to go over some of the things that we're dealing with right now. So first and foremost, I talked about marriage. Over the last, this is blackdemographics.com, over the last few decades, marriage has been a declining institution among all Americans. Talk to young people today, they say, I don't want to get married. And it's even more evident in the black community. In 2019, only 30% of African Americans were married compared to 48% of all Americans. Half of 50% of African Americans had never been married compared to 34% of all Americans. So we're not getting married. This is you see it here. Black never been married. Black men never been married. 52. Black women 48%. All of the U.S. 34%. Illegitimacy rates. So that this is one of the main problems that we have as a people. 77.3% of Black Americans had the highest rate of non-marital births among natives. Outside of slavery, when slavery was over, that terrible institution of slavery, you understand we had more children in wedlock than our white counterparts. But today, we have almost 80% of our children being born outside of wedlock. That is a problem. You got 1.5 million Black men just missing out of society. For every 100 Black women, there's 17 missing Black men. Don't you understand that family is the building block of society? And that family begins with a man and a woman coming together in the confines of marriage. So when you have all these illegitimate children, 57% of Black children absent. 57% of Black children have biological fathers that are absent. That's what that should say. That's in family structure and children's living arrangements. With the increasing number of premarital births and continuing high divorce rate, the proportion of children living with just one parent rose from 9.1 in 1960 to 20.7 in 2012. Currently, 55.1% of all black children are living in single-parent homes. Suicide rate. So if there's not a father in the home, 63% of youth suicides are from fatherless homes. 90% of all homeless and runaway children are from fatherless homes, 32 times the average. 85% of all children who show behavior disorders come from fatherless homes, 20 times the average. Because you go, well, what's wrong with him? He just needs his father to discipline him. Sexual assault, 80% of rapists with anger problems come from fatherless homes. 71% of all high school dropouts come from fatherless homes. 75% of adolescent patients in chemical abuse centers come from fatherless homes. A study of 109 juvenile offenders indicated that family structure significantly predicts delinquency. There's no way in the world my child gonna go be out somewhere robbing a liquor store or shooting somebody. Because I'm nipping in the bud. First time you try to steal some candy from the gas station, you're gonna wish you had never stole. And you ain't gonna steal again. 70% of juveniles in state-operated institutions have no father. So this is a sexual activity among you. A study using a sample of 1,409 rural Southern adolescents aged 11 to 18 investigated the correlation between father absence and self-reported sexual activity. The results revealed that adolescents in father absence homes were more likely to report being sexually active compared to adolescents living with their fathers. Again, your father is protection. Poverty. Being raised by a single mother raises the risk of teen pregnancy, marrying with less than a high school degree, and forming a marriage where both parents have less than a high school degree. Because your father's like, wait, he ain't graduated from high school, you ain't marrying him. You better sit out. What you doing? Have a seat, quick. Children in father absent homes are almost 4 times more likely to be poor. 2011, 12% of children in married couple families were living in poverty, compared to 44% of children in mother-only families. What is a father? If you look at the Paleo Hebrew of the word it's the ox, and then you have babies. That's a tent, and that's the ox. The ox represents strength. Bay represents the house. What is a father? You are the strength of the home. That's what you are. So when you are not there, that house, that ain't no tent. That's just a tarp. That's just a tarp. You got somebody running around talking about what they're doing. No, you actually, your strength is gone. Your protection is gone. And last I talked about, this is it, I talked about the last form of genocide that's going on right now. So for all this, now our birth rates are going down. And have been for years. So no longer are we getting married. And then when we do have children, they're born outside of wedlock. But then you having all these babies, black babies that have been killed. Of abortions, we accounted for 30%. And from 1973, you see here, now these are actually conservative estimates. Every year you see this is how many black babies were killed. CDC got a number, Guttmacher got a number. It still don't have all of them because they don't take all the numbers of the abortions. So you got year after year, you have all these babies. Now, even though abortion is going down all around, because you have various forms of birth control and other forms of pills and so forth, you still kill 20 million babies. So no longer does Pharaoh have to come and command the people to go throw the male babies in the river. You throwing your own babies away. So we're roughly 40-some% of the population and have killed 20 million of our own progeny since Roe v. Wade. The progeny, the fruit of the womb, is what comes forth of marriage, and that is the point of marriage. That's how you know we have totally lost our way. We've totally lost our way. That's marriage and family and ancient Hebraic culture and our current crisis. It's always my prayer that you will edify. What we're going to do is we're going to stand up, we're going to face Jerusalem, and we're going to close out.
Our Father, which art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come. Thy will be done. In earth, as it is in heaven. Give us this day. Our daily bread. And forgive us of our debts. As we forgive our debtors. And lead us not into temptation. But deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom. And the power. And the glory. Forever. In Jesus' name we pray. The King of Kings. And Lord of Lords. Amen.
Thank you so much.
All right. One man show. What's up, brother? Hey, brother James, how you doing? Good. Hey, this brother James. Look, we just happened to meet. He was listening to a lesson. I was getting my car washed. He was there listening to a lesson. That's how we met. That's it. Yeah, that's right. I'm good. That's right. Yeah.
So what did you say?
I was just saying that too.
Say again?
I was just saying that was still online.
Oh, they're still online? Oh, yeah, they still on there? Just want to say peace to everybody that's listening. Edified message today.
Hey, how you doing, brother?